I never thought my quiet suburban life in Greenville, South Carolina would turn into a legal nightmare involving theft, invasion of privacy, and the most insufferable woman I'd ever met. But here we are. My name is Xavier Marlowe, and I'm a 34-year-old software engineer who works from home. I bought my house in the Willow Creek Estates subdivision 3 years ago, thinking it would be the perfect place to settle down. The neighborhood was clean, the houses were well maintained, and the price was right. What I didn't fully appreciate at the time was just how aggressive the homeowners association could be, particularly when led by someone like Brenda Patterson. Brenda was the HOA president, a 47-year-old woman with short blonde hair, styled in what I can only describe as the quintessential "let me speak to your manager" cut. She wore designer athleisure wear constantly, even though I'd never seen her actually exercise, and she drove a white Mercedes SUV with a "Live, Laugh, Love" bumper sticker. From day one, she made it clear that she took her position very seriously, perhaps too seriously. The first real conflict started on a Tuesday morning in March. I'd been having issues with package theft in my neighborhood. 3 times in the past 2 months, deliveries had vanished from my front porch. One was an expensive mechanical keyboard I'd ordered for work, another was a birthday gift for my sister, and the third was a set of power tools I needed for some home repairs. Each time, the tracking showed the package as delivered, but it was nowhere to be found. After the third incident, I decided enough was enough. I went to Home Depot and bought a comprehensive security camera system. It wasn't anything crazy, just 4 cameras. One covering the front door, one on the driveway, one watching the backyard, and one pointed at my detached shed where I kept my lawn equipment and other valuable items. The shed camera was particularly important because I'd noticed the lock looked scratched, like someone had been messing with it. I spent the entire Saturday installing the system, running cables, and setting up the cloud storage subscription. The cameras were high quality with night vision and motion detection. I could access the footage from my phone anywhere I had an internet connection. It gave me peace of mind, knowing that if someone tried to steal from me again, I'd have evidence. That peace of mind lasted exactly 4 days. On Wednesday afternoon, I was in the middle of debugging some code when my doorbell rang. I saved my work and headed downstairs, opening the door to find Brenda standing on my porch with her iPad clutched to her chest like a shield. Her expression was the particular blend of smugness and disapproval that I'd come to recognize. "Xavier, we need to talk about your recent modifications to your property," she said without preamble. I blinked. "Modifications? I haven't modified anything." She held up the iPad, showing me a photo of my house taken from the street. She'd circled the security cameras in red. "These cameras are not approved by the HOA. According to Section 7, Paragraph 3 of our bylaws, any external modifications, including security systems, must be submitted for architectural review at least 30 days in advance." "They're security cameras, Brenda. They're for preventing crime." "That may be, but rules are rules. You need to submit an application, pay the $50 review fee, and wait for the architectural committee to approve them. Until then, they need to come down." I felt my jaw clench. "Someone has been stealing packages from my porch. These cameras are necessary." "Then you should have followed the proper procedures," she said, her voice taking on that patronizing tone that made my blood pressure rise. "I'm giving you until Sunday to remove them, or the HOA will begin issuing fines. $200 per day until compliance is achieved." "This is ridiculous. These cameras don't hurt anyone. They're small. They're discreet, and they're protecting my property." Brenda's expression hardened. "The rules exist for a reason, Xavier. They maintain property values and ensure our neighborhood remains attractive. I've seen these camera systems get out of hand. Before you know it, everyone will want to install whatever security theater they think they need, and our community will look like a prison yard." "Security theater? Someone is literally stealing from me." "Have you filed a police report?" "Yes, 3 times. They said without evidence, there's nothing they can do." "Then I suggest you use the doorbell camera, which is permitted under Section 7, Paragraph 5 as an integrated home system." She tapped her iPad screen. "External standalone camera systems require approval. I didn't write the rules, Xavier. I just enforce them." I took a deep breath, trying to keep my temper under control. "Fine. I'll submit an application, but I'm not taking the cameras down until it's reviewed." Her eyes narrowed. "That's not how this works." "Then I guess you'll have to find me, because those cameras are staying up." We stared at each other for a long moment. Finally, Brenda gave me a tight smile. "I'll be documenting your refusal to comply. The fines will begin on Monday. Have a nice day." She turned on her heel and walked back to her Mercedes, which she'd parked in front of my house despite there being no reason to do so. I watched her drive away, then closed the door harder than necessary. Over the next few days, I did submit the application, filling out the ridiculous 6-page form and paying the fee. I included photos of the cameras from multiple angles, a detailed explanation of why they were necessary, and even references to South Carolina law regarding home security systems. The application went to the Architectural Review Committee, which consisted of Brenda and 2 of her friends from the neighborhood. Meanwhile, something interesting started happening. My cameras began capturing footage of a man I didn't recognize walking through my backyard at odd hours. He always came after dark, usually around 11 at night. He'd walk along the fence line, sometimes stopping to look at my shed, other times appearing to test the back gate. The man was in his early 50s, tall and thin with graying hair. He wore dark clothing and always approached from the alley behind my house rather than from the street. On the night vision footage, I could see him trying the shed lock multiple times. He never succeeded in opening it, because after noticing the scratches, I'd upgraded to a heavy-duty padlock. I saved all the footage and considered going to the police, but I wasn't sure what crime had actually been committed. Trespassing maybe, but he hadn't stolen anything or caused any damage. Still, it was deeply unsettling to know someone was creeping around my property in the middle of the night. On Friday, exactly 1 week after Brenda's first visit, she returned. This time she had a man with her, the same man from my security footage. My stomach dropped as I recognized him. "Xavier, this is my husband, Richard," Brenda said when I opened the door. "He's here to help me conduct an inspection of your property to document the unauthorized security installations." Richard gave me a bland smile and a small wave. Up close, I could see the resemblance to the figure in my footage was unmistakable. Same height, same build, same receding hairline. My mind raced. Why would Brenda's husband be sneaking around my backyard at night? "An inspection," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "I don't think that's necessary." Section 12, Paragraph 1 grants the HOA board the right to inspect any property for compliance issues with 48 hours notice, Brenda said. "I sent you an email on Wednesday." I had seen the email but assumed it was just more harassment. "I'm working right now. This isn't a good time." "Will only be a few minutes," Richard said. His voice was raspy, like he smoked too much. "Just need to get some photos for the file." Every instinct told me not to let them onto my property, but I also knew that refusing would just give Brenda more ammunition. "Fine, but make it quick." They walked around to the side of the house and I followed them, keeping my phone ready. Brenda took photos of each camera while Richard walked the perimeter of my yard. When they reached the back, Richard's attention fixed on the shed. "Nice shed," he said. "You keep equipment in there?" "Lawnmower, tools, that kind of thing." "Good lock," he observed, and I swear there was something calculating in his expression. "I upgraded it recently," I said pointedly. Brenda finished her photos and they returned to the front yard. "The Architectural Review Committee will meet on Monday to discuss your application," she said. "In the meantime, the fines will continue to accumulate. You're now at $600 in violations." "I look forward to the meeting," I said. After they left, I immediately pulled up my security footage and started reviewing everything I had of Richard. There were 5 separate incidents over the past week, always late at night, always focused on my shed. In one clip, I could clearly see him trying to pick the old lock before I'd replaced it. In another, he was peering through the small window on the side of the shed, using his phone's flashlight to see inside. This was way more than just trespassing. He was clearly casing my property, trying to figure out how to break into my shed. The question was why. I didn't keep anything particularly valuable in there. A lawnmower, a leaf blower, some hand tools, a toolbox, a small generator I'd bought for power outages, and some sporting equipment. Maybe $8,000 or $9,000 worth of stuff total, but nothing that would be easy to fence, unless he didn't know what I kept in there and was just assuming. I spent the weekend reviewing every second of footage and compiling the best clips. I created a folder on my computer labeled Richard Patterson Evidence and backed it up to 3 different cloud services. If something happened to my cameras, I wanted to make sure the evidence survived. On Monday evening, I attended the Architectural Review Committee meeting, which was held in the community clubhouse. The clubhouse was a small building near the neighborhood entrance with a meeting room, a kitchenette, and a bathroom. About 15 residents were there, most of them to present their own applications for various home improvements. I sat through applications for a fence, a new roof color, a mailbox replacement, and a request to plant a tree. The committee approved all of them with minimal discussion. Then it was my turn. Xavier Marlowe, Security Camera System, Brenda announced, reading from her notes. The committee has reviewed your application and we have some concerns. Here we go, I thought. First, the cameras are visible from the street, which creates a negative aesthetic impression, she continued. Second, there are concerns about privacy. Your cameras could potentially capture footage of neighboring properties. The cameras are angled to only cover my property, I said. I have the technical specifications here that show the field of view. Nevertheless, the perception of surveillance could make neighbors uncomfortable. A woman in the front row raised her hand. I recognized her as Margaret Chen, who lived 2 houses down from me. I'd like to speak in favor of Xavier's cameras, she said. I've had packages stolen too, and I think more people in this neighborhood should have security systems. That's not the issue under consideration, Brenda said curtly. It seems relevant, Margaret pressed. We have a theft problem. Security cameras help solve that problem. The HOA is not here to debate crime prevention strategies, Brenda said, her voice rising slightly. We're here to maintain community standards. Another man I didn't recognize spoke up. I have cameras on my house, have for 2 years. Nobody said anything to me. Brenda's jaw tightened. Were they approved by the architectural committee? I don't know. The previous owner installed them. Then we'll need to review your property as well. Please see me after the meeting. The man looked like he regretted saying anything. Richard, who was sitting in the back row, stood up. I think we also need to consider that security cameras can be used inappropriately. They could be pointed at bedroom windows, capturing people in private moments. We need safeguards. I turned to look at him. That's illegal regardless of HOA rules. There are laws about that. But how would we know if someone was doing it? Richard countered. The same way you'd know if someone was doing it without cameras. It would be reported and investigated. Brenda cut in before the discussion could continue. The committee votes no on this application. The cameras must be removed within 7 days or the fines will continue. I'd like to appeal that decision, I said immediately. Brenda sighed. Appeals must be submitted in writing within 10 business days and require a $100 fee. The full HOA board will review it at the next quarterly meeting. When is that? June 15th? 3 months away. That's ridiculous. You're going to fine me $200 a day for 3 months? You could just take the cameras down, Brenda suggested with false sweetness. I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. This is harassment, and everyone here knows it. This meeting is adjourned, Brenda said, banging her gavel. I left the clubhouse furious. Margaret caught up with me in the parking lot. That was completely unfair, she said. Brenda has had it out for you since you pushed back on the fence height rules last year. I'd forgotten about that. I'd wanted to install a 6-foot privacy fence, and Brenda had insisted that the bylaws only permitted 5-foot fences. I'd found an exception in the rules that allowed for 6 feet if approved for specific privacy needs, and I'd gone over her head to the full board, who approved it. She'd held a grudge ever since. I'm not taking the cameras down, I said. I have a right to protect my property. You might need to get a lawyer, Margaret suggested. I know HOA law can be tricky, but this seems excessive. She was right. I needed legal advice. The next morning, I called a real estate attorney whose name I found through the South Carolina Bar Association website. Her name was Patricia Newberry, and she specialized in HOA disputes. After explaining my situation, she agreed to review my case. The thing about HOAs is that they do have broad authority to enforce their bylaws, she told me during our consultation. However, that authority isn't unlimited. If their enforcement is arbitrary, discriminatory, or in bad faith, you have grounds to fight back. The fact that they approved another resident's cameras but not yours could be evidence of selective enforcement. What about the fines? Don't pay them. Once you pay, you're essentially admitting the validity of the fine. Let them accumulate and we'll contest them all at once. In the meantime, document everything, every interaction, every email, every notice. If this goes to court, we'll need a clear record. There's something else, I said. I told her about Richard sneaking around my property and trying to break into my shed. Her tone changed immediately. You have footage of this? Multiple nights' worth. That's criminal trespassing and attempted burglary. You need to file a police report immediately. This changes things significantly. If the HOA president's husband is committing crimes on your property and she's trying to force you to remove the cameras that caught him, that could be abuse of authority. It might even be criminal conspiracy depending on how involved she is. You think she knows what he's doing? I think it's awfully convenient that she's suddenly insistent about these cameras right when they're catching her husband in the act. She had a point. I thanked her and hung up, then called the Greenville Police non-emergency number. I explained the situation, and they sent an officer to my house that afternoon to take a report. The officer was a young guy named Officer Hayes. He reviewed my footage on my laptop, watching Richard trying the shed lock multiple times across different nights. Yeah, this is definitely criminal trespassing, Officer Hayes said, and attempted burglary. Do you know this individual? He's Richard Patterson. His wife is the HOA president. Officer Hayes raised his eyebrows. The HOA president's husband is trying to break into your shed? And his wife is trying to force me to take down the cameras that caught him. That's certainly interesting. I'll need copies of this footage for the case file. We'll contact Mr. Patterson and conduct an investigation. Have you had any direct confrontation with him about this? No, I only confirmed his identity yesterday when his wife brought him here for an inspection. Okay, don't confront him yourself. Let us handle it. In the meantime, I'd suggest adding more lighting around your shed and making sure everything is securely locked. I provided Officer Hayes with a USB drive containing all the footage of Richard, along with timestamps and written descriptions of each incident. He gave me a case number and said a detective would follow up within a few days. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept checking the camera feeds on my phone, expecting to see Richard back in my yard. Around 2 in the morning, I finally dozed off on the couch. I woke up to my phone buzzing with motion alerts. I grabbed it and opened the security app, my heart pounding. The timestamp said 3:15 in the morning. The backyard camera showed a figure at my shed, working on the lock with what looked like bolt cutters. It was Richard. I watched in real time as he cut through the padlock. The sound must have been loud because he kept looking around nervously. Once the lock fell away, he pulled open the shed door and went inside with a flashlight. I was already calling 911. 911, what's your emergency? Someone is breaking into my shed right now, I said, keeping my voice low, even though there was no way Richard could hear me inside my house. I have him on my security cameras. What's your address? I gave it to her along with a description of Richard and what he was doing. Officers are on the way. Are you safe inside your house? Yes, I'm inside. He's in the backyard shed. Stay inside and away from windows. Don't confront the intruder. I kept watching the feed. Richard emerged from the shed carrying my generator, struggling with its weight. He set it down, went back inside, and came out with my toolbox. Then, the leaf blower. He was loading everything into what I could now see was a small cart or dolly that he'd brought with him. Red and blue lights flashed in front of my house. I stayed on the line with 911 as I watched Richard freeze, then abandon the cart and run toward the back fence. He tried to climb it, but he wasn't fast enough. 2 officers came around the side of my house with flashlights and ordered him to the ground. Officers have him, the 911 dispatcher confirmed. You can go outside now if you'd like, but stay back and let the officers work. I ended the call and went out my back door. Richard was face down on the grass with his hands cuffed behind his back. One officer was standing over him while the other was examining the shed and the stolen items. Mr. Marlowe? The second officer called. Oh, that's me. Can you confirm these items belong to you? Yes, all of it. The generator, the toolbox, the leaf blower. And you have security footage of the break-in? I'm watching it on my phone right now. I also have footage of him attempting to break in several times over the past 2 weeks. The officer's expression turned grim. This is Richard Patterson? Yes. We just interviewed him 2 days ago about the trespassing report. He claimed it was a misunderstanding, that he thought your property was a shortcut to his friend's house. That's clearly not true. They hauled Richard to his feet. In the porch light, I could see his face was red, whether from exertion or embarrassment or anger, I couldn't tell. "You're going to regret this," Richard said to me, his voice shaking. "Sir, don't say anything else," one of the officers warned him. "That's my property," Richard continued. "He stole from me and put it in that shed. I was just taking back what's mine." "That's completely false," I said. "I have receipts for everything in that shed." "Sir, you need to stop talking," the officer repeated, more firmly this time. They led Richard around the side of the house toward the patrol car out front. I followed at a distance. A small crowd of neighbors had gathered on the street, drawn by the commotion and police lights. I saw Margaret standing on her lawn in a bathrobe. A few houses down, someone was recording on their phone. And then I saw Brenda's Mercedes come screeching around the corner, moving way too fast for a residential street. She pulled up in front of my house and jumped out, still in her pajamas with a coat thrown over them. "What's going on?" she demanded. "Richard, what are you doing to my husband?" "Madam, your husband was caught breaking into this residence's shed and attempting to steal property," one of the officers explained. "That's insane. Richard, tell them this is a mistake." Richard, now sitting in the back of the patrol car, just shook his head. Brenda turned on me. "You did this. You set him up." "I didn't set anyone up. My security cameras caught him red-handed." "Those illegal cameras. This footage is inadmissible. You can't use it." One of the officers stepped forward. "Madam, the cameras are on his property recording his property. The footage is perfectly legal and admissible. But the HOA doesn't allow those cameras. He violated the rules." "HOA rules don't supersede criminal law," the officer said. "Now I need you to calm down or I'll have to ask you to leave." Brenda looked like she was about to explode. Her face was turning purple and her hands were clenched into fists. "This is harassment. My husband is innocent and this whole thing is a setup to get back at me for enforcing the HOA rules." "Madam, we have clear video evidence of your husband cutting a lock and removing property from the shed. This isn't a setup. This is a crime in progress that was interrupted." Margaret walked over, her phone in her hand. "Brenda, maybe you should go home. You're making this worse." "Stay out of this, Margaret," Brenda snapped. The officer's patience was clearly wearing thin. "Madam, you have two choices. You can go home now, or I can arrest you for obstruction and interfering with a police investigation. What's it going to be?" Brenda opened her mouth, closed it, then stomped back to her Mercedes. She peeled away from the curb with a screech of tires, nearly clipping one of the patrol cars. The officers spent another 30 minutes at my house, taking my statement, collecting copies of the security footage, and examining the shed. They took photos of the cut lock and the items Richard had attempted to steal. They told me Richard would be charged with burglary, criminal trespassing, and destruction of property for the lock. "You'll need to appear in court eventually," one officer told me. "The solicitor's office will contact you about testifying." "No problem," I said. After they left, I stood in my backyard looking at my violated shed. The new lock I'd bought was destroyed. The items were scattered around the cart Richard had brought. I felt violated and angry, but also vindicated. The cameras had proven their worth beyond any doubt. I spent the rest of the night securing the shed as best I could and bringing the more valuable items inside the house. I finally went to bed around 6 in the morning, exhausted but too wired to really sleep. My phone started ringing at 8. It was my attorney, Patricia Newberry. "I just saw the police report," she said. "Richard Patterson was arrested?" "At 3 in the morning. The cameras caught him breaking into my shed." "This is exactly what I was afraid of. Listen, Xavier, this situation has escalated significantly. I think we need to be proactive here. The HOA is going to retaliate, and we need to be ready for it." "What can they do? Their president's husband just got arrested for burglarizing my property." "They can continue to fine you. They can put a lien on your house for unpaid fines. They can make your life miserable in a dozen small ways. And if Brenda is vindictive, which she clearly is, she'll find every possible rule you might be violating and hammer you with it. So what do? We go on offense. I'm going to draft a letter to the HOA board informing them that we're considering legal action for abuse of authority, selective enforcement, and creating a hostile environment. We'll cite the camera situation, the fact that other residents have cameras without issue, and now the very convenient arrest of the HOA president's husband right after she tried to force you to remove the cameras that caught him. We'll demand that all fines be rescinded and your cameras be approved immediately. Will that work? It might. If the board has any sense, they'll realize Brenda is a liability and remove her from her position. If not, we'll file suit. How much is this going to cost me? Let's cross that bridge when we come to it. For now, the demand letter is included in your initial consultation fee. After that, we'll discuss a payment plan if we need to move forward. I thanked her and hung up. I tried to work that day but couldn't focus. Every time I looked at my security feeds, I remembered watching Richard break into my shed in real time. The feeling of violation was intense. The story spread through the neighborhood like wildfire. By noon, I'd received texts from 4 different neighbors I barely knew, all asking if I was okay and expressing shock about Richard's arrest. One couple dropped off a casserole with a note saying they supported me. It was surreal. What wasn't surreal were the messages from Brenda. She sent me 3 emails that day, each more unhinged than the last. The first was formal, stating that the fines would continue and I now owed $2,400. The second accused me of entrapment and said the HOA was considering legal action against me. The third was just a rant about how I'd destroyed her family and she would make sure I regretted it. I forwarded all of them to Patricia. On Thursday, I received a certified letter from the HOA attorney. It informed me that I was in violation of multiple bylaws and had 15 days to comply or face additional penalties, including a lien on my property. The violations listed included the security cameras, grass that was allegedly too long, it wasn't, a trash can that had been left out past collection day, I'd brought it in within an hour, and a garden hose that was improperly stored. It was coiled neatly by my outside faucet. It was clearly retaliation, and it was pathetic. Patricia responded with her own letter. It was 5 pages long and laid out in meticulous legal detail why the HOA's actions constituted harassment, selective enforcement, and abuse of authority. She cited specific South Carolina statutes regarding HOA governance and included references to case law where courts had ruled against HOAs for similar behavior. She demanded immediate rescission of all fines, approval of my security cameras, and Brenda's resignation from the board. She also included a paragraph noting that Richard Patterson's criminal case was a matter of public record and that it would be unfortunate if the court proceedings revealed that the HOA president had used her position to facilitate her husband's criminal activity. That was a shot across the bow if I'd ever seen one. The HOA board called an emergency meeting for the following Tuesday. All residents were invited. I made sure to attend, bringing printed copies of all my security footage, timestamps, emails from Brenda, and Patricia's letter. The meeting room was packed. Every seat was taken and people were standing along the walls. The tension in the air was palpable. Margaret gave me a thumbs up from her seat near the front. I saw several board members who looked distinctly uncomfortable. Brenda sat at the head table, looking defiant, but also exhausted. Her hair wasn't as perfectly styled as usual, and she had dark circles under her eyes. Richard's arrest had clearly taken a toll. The board vice president, a man named Tom Sanders, called the meeting to order. We're here tonight to address several issues that have arisen in recent weeks regarding property compliance and board governance, he began. Brenda tried to interrupt, but Tom held up a hand. Brenda, you'll have a chance to speak. But first, I want to address the elephant in the room. Many of you have heard about the incident involving Richard Patterson and Xavier Marlowe. The board has reviewed the police reports and security footage. We take this matter very seriously. It's a personal matter that has nothing to do with HOA business, Brenda said sharply. With respect, Brenda, it has everything to do with HOA business when the president's husband is arrested for burglarizing a property, and the president had just denied that resident's application for the very security cameras that caught the crime. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. Tom continued. We've also received a letter from Mr. Marlowe's attorney raising concerns about selective enforcement and abuse of authority. After reviewing the situation, I have to say those concerns appear valid. This is ridiculous, Brenda said, standing up. I've served this community for 6 years. I've kept property values up, enforced the rules fairly, and maintained our standards. Now I'm being attacked because one resident decided to break the rules and my husband made a mistake. A mistake? Someone shouted from the back. He was arrested for burglary. My husband's legal situation is between him and his attorney, Brenda shot back. It has nothing to do with my role as HOA president. It does when you tried to force the victim to remove the cameras that caught him, Tom said firmly. Brenda, I think it's time you step down from the board. The room exploded. Some people applauded. Others started talking all at once. Brenda's face went bright red. You can't remove me. I'm elected. The bylaws allow for removal of board members for cause by a 2/3 vote of the full board, Tom said. I'm calling for that vote right now. This is a witch hunt, Brenda screamed. You're all turning on me because one man decided to make trouble. I stood up. Brenda, your husband broke into my shed and tried to steal my property. I have it on camera. The police have it on camera. This isn't about making trouble. This is about you abusing your position to cover up for a crime. I didn't know what Richard was doing. Then why were you so insistent that I remove my cameras? Why right when they started catching him on my property? Because they violate the rules. Other people have cameras. You approve them. That's different. How? She didn't have an answer. The room had gone silent, everyone watching our exchange. Tom cleared his throat. Board members, we need to vote. All in favor of removing Brenda Patterson from her position as HOA president and from the board entirely, say aye. 4 voices said aye. Opposed? Silence. The motion passes. Brenda, you're removed from the board effective immediately. Please return all HOA documents and keys to Tom within 48 hours. Brenda grabbed her purse and iPad. You're all going to regret this. I'll sue every single one of you. She stormed out, slamming the door behind her. Tom sighed. Well, that was unpleasant but necessary. Now, let's address Mr. Marlowe's situation. I move that we immediately approve his security camera system and rescind all associated fines. Second, another board member said. All in favor? Everyone said aye. Motion passes. Xavier, you're approved. We apologize for the trouble this has caused. The crowd applauded. I felt a wave of relief wash over me. It wasn't quite over. Richard's criminal case was still pending, and I had no doubt Brenda would try something else. But this was a major victory. After the meeting, several neighbors came up to thank me for standing up to Brenda. Apparently, I wasn't the only one she'd been harassing. Multiple people shared stories of petty fines, arbitrary rule enforcement, and general unpleasantness. One man said she'd tried to fine him for parking his work van in his driveway overnight, even though he had a commercial vehicle exemption. Another woman said Brenda had threatened to report her to code enforcement because her kids' toys were visible in the yard. Margaret walked out with me. I'm glad that's over, she said. Brenda's been a problem for years, but nobody wanted to rock the boat. Sometimes you have to rock the boat, I said. True. Hey, do you think you could help me install some cameras on my house? After seeing how yours worked, I want the same thing. I laughed. Sure, I'll send you the links to the equipment I bought. Over the next few weeks, things slowly returned to normal. The new HOA president was a retired teacher named Donald Freeman, who ran the board with a much lighter touch. He focused on actual community issues like street maintenance and neighborhood events, rather than nitpicking everyone's lawn height. Richard's criminal case moved forward. The solicitor's office contacted me to give testimony before the grand jury, which indicted Richard on charges of second-degree burglary, criminal trespassing, and malicious injury to property. His attorney tried to negotiate a plea deal, but the solicitor wasn't interested in anything less than a guilty plea with jail time. I learned through the neighborhood rumor mill that Brenda and Richard were having serious financial problems. Richard had lost his job at a medical supply company 6 months earlier and hadn't told Brenda about it. He'd been pretending to go to work every day while actually looking for a new position. He'd burned through their savings and maxed out credit cards, and he'd gotten desperate. He thought my shed contained expensive tools and equipment he could sell quickly for cash. It was a stupid, desperate crime, and it had destroyed his life, and Brenda's, by extension. They put their house up for sale in May. I saw the listing online, a beautiful 4-bedroom colonial listed at $495,000. The photos showed an immaculately maintained interior with high-end finishes and designer furniture. They were asking top dollar, but given the circumstances, I doubted they'd get it. In June, Richard's case went to trial. I testified about the security footage, the attempted break-ins, and the night I caught him red-handed. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours before finding him guilty on all counts. The judge sentenced him to 5 years in prison with the possibility of parole after 2. Richard broke down crying when the sentence was read. Brenda, sitting in the gallery, just sat stone-faced. I felt a complicated mix of emotions. I didn't enjoy seeing someone's life destroyed, even someone who'd tried to rob me. But actions have consequences, and Richard had made his choices. As I left the courthouse, Brenda was standing outside smoking a cigarette. She looked 10 years older than when I'd first met her. The designer athleisure was gone, replaced with a simple black dress. Her hair was unstyled and going gray at the roots. "I hope you're happy," she said when she saw me. I stopped. "I'm not happy about any of this, Brenda. I just wanted to protect my property. You destroyed my family." "Richard destroyed your family when he decided to commit burglary. That's on him, not me. If you'd just taken down those cameras like I asked, none of this would have happened. If your husband hadn't tried to rob me, none of this would have happened. Don't blame me for doing what any reasonable person would do." She took a long drag on her cigarette. "We're losing the house, did you know that? We can't afford the mortgage without Richard's income, and now with his legal fees and everything else, we're broke. I'm going to have to move in with my sister in Colombia." "I'm sorry you're going through that," I said, and I meant it, "but it's still not my fault." "You could have just followed the rules," she said quietly. "That's all I ever wanted, everyone following the same rules. The rules aren't more important than people, Brenda. You forgot that. I walked away." I heard her start to cry behind me, but I didn't turn around. The Patterson house sold in July for $420,000, well below asking price. I saw the moving trucks outside on a Saturday morning. Brenda didn't look at my house as she drove away for the last time. I was outside watering my garden, and I watched her Mercedes disappear around the corner. Margaret came over that evening with a bottle of wine. We sat on my back porch and talked about everything that had happened. "Do you ever feel bad about it?" she asked. "I mean, I know Richard is the one who committed the crime, but still, their whole life fell apart." "Sometimes," I admitted, "but then I remember that he made a choice to try to rob me, multiple times, and Brenda made a choice to abuse her authority. They both could have made different choices." "True, I guess I just never expected something like this to happen in our neighborhood." "Me neither. I just wanted to stop people from stealing my packages," she laughed. "Well, you definitely accomplished that. I don't think anyone's going to mess with your property ever again." She was right about that. My house became something of a legend in Willow Creek Estates. The house with the cameras that caught the burglar. New residents would ask about it, and the story would get retold with varying degrees of accuracy. Some versions had me installing 20 cameras. Others had Richard attempting to break in during broad daylight. The truth was strange enough without embellishment. The new HOA board approved security camera installations for 6 other houses in the neighborhood over the following months. Margaret got hers installed in August. The Chens across the street put up cameras in September. Tom Sanders, now the vice president under Donald Freeman's leadership, installed a whole system with cameras covering every angle of his property. The package theft problem vanished. Turns out that having visible security cameras is an excellent deterrent. Who would have thought? In October, I got a letter from Richard. It had been forwarded through the solicitor's office, which had to approve all his outgoing mail from prison. It was handwritten on lined paper, and the handwriting was shaky. "Dear Mr. Marlowe," it began. "I know this letter probably won't mean much to you, but I wanted to apologize for what I did. I was desperate and stupid, and I made terrible choices. I destroyed my life and my wife's life because I was too proud to admit I needed help. You didn't deserve what I tried to do to you. I'm glad you had those cameras, because if I'd succeeded in robbing you, I probably would have done it again to someone else. At least this way I got caught before I hurt more people. I hope you can forgive me someday. Sincerely, Richard Patterson." I read the letter 3 times. It seemed genuine, but I couldn't be sure. People in prison say a lot of things they think others want to hear. Still, I appreciated the gesture. I didn't write back. There was nothing I needed to say to him. Life moved on. The holidays came and went. I hosted Thanksgiving at my house for the first time, inviting Margaret and a few other neighbors. We ate too much turkey and watched football and didn't talk about HOA drama or burglaries or any of the chaos from earlier in the year. In January, I got a new job offer from a tech company in Charlotte, North Carolina. It was a significant pay increase and a chance to work on more interesting projects. I spent a few weeks thinking about whether to take it. Part of me wanted a fresh start, away from the memories of everything that had happened, but another part of me felt like leaving would be letting Brenda and Richard win, in a way. They'd driven me out of my home. In the end, I decided to stay. I liked my house. I liked most of my neighbors. I'd worked hard to defend my rights, and I wasn't going to abandon the place just because it had some bad associations. Besides, the new HOA board was actually functional and reasonable. Donald Freeman sent out monthly newsletters that focused on community events and maintenance schedules rather than rule violations. It was refreshing. I turned down the Charlotte job and negotiated a raise with my current employer instead. They were happy to keep me. By February, the whole situation felt like ancient history. New neighbors moved into the Patterson house, a young couple with twins. They introduced themselves one Saturday and seemed nice. I didn't mention the previous owners. There was no reason to poison the well. Spring arrived, and with it came the annual HOA meeting where board positions were up for election. Donald Freeman ran for president again and won unanimously. Tom Sanders remained as vice president. The treasurer and secretary positions went to other longtime residents who actually cared about the community rather than petty power. During the meeting, Donald gave a report on the state of the neighborhood. Crime was down, property values were up, resident satisfaction surveys showed massive improvement over the previous year. He specifically mentioned the security camera installations as a positive development that had helped deter theft and vandalism. "We're a community that looks out for each other," he said. "That's what HOAs should be about, not harassing people over the height of their grass, but actually making this a better place to live." Everyone applauded. It was a far cry from the contentious meetings under Brenda's reign. After the meeting, I walked home under a clear night sky. My security cameras quietly recorded my approach, the motion sensors triggering the porch light. I unlocked my door and stepped inside, feeling genuinely content. The whole ordeal had been stressful and expensive and frustrating. I'd spent thousands on legal fees, even though Patricia had given me a discount. I'd lost sleep and dealt with more drama than I'd experienced in my entire adult life. But I'd also learned something important. Standing up for yourself matters. If I'd caved to Brenda's demands and taken down the cameras, Richard would have successfully robbed me. Maybe he would have escalated to breaking into my house. Maybe he would have targeted other neighbors. The cameras didn't just protect me. They protected everyone. And the HOA learned a lesson too. They learned that residents have rights and that board members can't act like petty tyrants. They learned that rules should serve the community, not the other way around. Brenda's removal sent a clear message that abuse of authority wouldn't be tolerated. In a weird way, the whole situation made Willow Creek Estates a better place. People were more engaged with the HOA now, attending meetings and paying attention to board decisions. The board was more transparent and responsive, and the neighborhood felt safer and more connected. I poured myself a drink and sat down at my computer to check my security footage from the day, a habit I'd developed. Everything was quiet and normal. My shed was intact, now protected by a heavy-duty lock and an additional motion sensor light. My lawnmower and tools were right where they should be. The generator that Richard had tried to steal was sitting securely on its shelf. I thought about that night, watching the footage in real time as Richard broke into my shed. The adrenaline, the fear, the anger, the satisfaction of watching the police arrive and catch him red-handed, the long months of legal proceedings and HOA battles that followed. It all felt distant now, like something that had happened to someone else. But the cameras were still there, quietly recording, protecting my property and giving me peace of mind. And that was worth everything I'd gone through. I finished my drink and headed upstairs to bed. Tomorrow was Sunday, and I planned to spend it working in my yard, maybe installing some new landscaping in the front. Normal, boring, suburban tasks, exactly what I wanted. As I was falling asleep, my phone buzzed with a notification. Motion detected on backyard camera. My heart jumped before I remembered that the motion sensors sometimes triggered on raccoons or possums. I opened the app and looked at the feed. A possum was waddling across my lawn, probably heading for someone's garbage can. I smiled and put the phone down. Just another quiet night in Willow Creek Estates. The cameras kept recording through the night, as they would every night. Silent guardians against the world's chaos. They'd already justified their existence beyond any doubt, and if I ever had another problem with theft or trespassing or anything else, I'd have the evidence I needed. Brenda had wanted me to take down my security cameras. She'd threatened me with fines, harassed me with petty violations, and tried to use her authority to force compliance. But in the end, those cameras had caught her husband committing a crime and exposed her abuse of power. They'd protected me in more ways than I'd ever anticipated. Sometimes the best revenge is simply refusing to be victimized. Sometimes standing your ground and insisting on your rights is enough to change everything. I'd bought those cameras to catch package thieves. Instead, they'd caught a burglar, exposed a corrupt HOA president, and transformed an entire community's relationship with its governance. Not bad for a $400 investment from Home Depot. As I drifted off to sleep, I felt grateful for a lot of things. Grateful for technology that let me protect my property, grateful for neighbors who'd supported me, grateful for an attorney who'd fought for my rights, grateful for a justice system that, despite its flaws, had held Richard accountable for his actions. But mostly, I was grateful that I'd trusted my instincts and refused to back down when Brenda tried to bully me into compliance. It would have been easier to just remove the cameras and avoid the conflict. But easier isn't always better. Sometimes you have to fight for what's right, even when it's hard and scary and expensive. The security cameras had done more than catch a criminal. They'd taught me something important about standing up for myself and refusing to be pushed around by petty tyrants. They'd shown me that communities function better when everyone insists on fairness and accountability, even from those in authority. And they'd given me peace of mind, which was priceless. The last thing I thought before sleep took me was that I needed to write a review for those cameras online. 5 stars, definitely. Would recommend.